In the time of King Herod, by the way, this is Matthew 2, verses 1 through 15. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, magi from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star in the east and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. And they told him, "In Bethlehem in Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, and the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the Magi and learned from them the exact time that the star had appeared. And then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen in the east, until it stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw the child, or the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. And on entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. Now, after they had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up and take this child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for this child to destroy him." So Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night, and they fled to Egypt and remained there until the death of Herod. And this was to fulfill what had been spoken by God through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." So it's Epiphany. And among other things, one of the things I love about Epiphany is that it gives me a chance to share my favorite Epiphany joke. It only makes sense one time a year. So what would have happened if it had been 3 wise women instead of 3 wise men? They would have asked directions, arrived on time, helped deliver the baby, cleaned the stable, made something to eat, and brought gifts that a young mother could actually use. The more I have worked with and thought and prayed about it, the more important the story we call Epiphany has become to me. So much so that this year I'm going to split it up into 2 weeks. I'm going to take 2 weeks to cover this. It's too much to try to get into in just one message. Now, as I've shared every year, I think, since I've been here, when Epiphany comes around again, there are some details about the Epiphany story that we might as well clear up. Most of them come to us from that song, "We Three Kings," which is a catchy little tune. I love the hymn. But, the mother of my children, Anne, who was here a few weeks ago, she grew up in Kansas City in a town where the mascot or the school was referred to as Westwood. Westwood. It was not the mascot, but that was the name of the school. And when she heard this, she thought it was their school fight song. Westwood leading, still proceeding. Yeah. But it has that kind of march, catchy little tune to it. And I love it, but unfortunately it's just not very accurate. There's no mention of 3 kings in the Bible. For all we know, there may have been this caravan of people from the east. In fact, that's more than likely, because the entire city of Jerusalem was frightened by whatever appeared there as they were searching for this. Herod heard about it. Herod was afraid. The whole city was frightened. It was a big deal. Probably not just 3 guys. There's also no mention of kings in the Gospels. The magi comes from the same root word as the word magic. Scholars really aren't sure who these mystical persons from the East were. Many suggest that they're probably Persian, and that would be the modern-day Iran. Persian Zoroastrian priests or astrologers. So whoever they were, they also weren't, as we've noted, actually at the manger with the shepherds and angels when Jesus was born, even though they're such a beautiful part of most creche scenes and art. Now, let's look a little closer at the overall message of Christmas and Epiphany together. Some of the deeper meanings of Epiphany are brought home powerfully in a book by New Testament scholars Marcus Borg and Dominic Crossan called The First Christmas. And I think we have it in our library now. And by the way, thanks to Lake Edge UCC and their generous invitation for us to go to their library and look through their library as they close their building. We have, I think, the entire collection of Marcus Borg and Dominic Crossan books in our library now. So if this stuff interests you, what I'm about to share with you, help yourself to those books. These two scholars insist that we really can't begin to understand the deeper meanings of Advent and Christmas and Epiphany, all those events in the Bible, without seeing and hearing them in their own historical context. And this is the kind of thing that I'm not going to try to get into on Christmas Eve, because as you'll see, it quickly gets controversial. And I thought about it. I don't want to say stuff on Christmas Eve that's going to get you in a fight with your family members who are out of town visiting. This will be familiar to some of you, but we all need to hear it again and again in order to get this. The Roman Empire, the occupying force of Palestine in the first century, had its own religion. All empires do, to one degree or another. Founding myths and stories about how we understand who we are and where we came from. The Roman imperial religion regarded and referred to the emperor, Caesar, as, quote, the Son of God. That was the title Caesar claimed for himself, and it was on the coins, Son of God. And there were official written stories about the birth of Caesar and Caesar's divine genealogy and lineage. And these written accounts were referred to as Gospels. There were written accounts of the Gospel of Caesar, announcing to all the good tidings, the word gospel means good news, announcing to all the world the good tidings of the birth of the Savior, Caesar, who was divinely conceived, born of God, and sent to save the world and to bring peace on the entire earth. Caesar, at the time Jesus was born, was called Son of God, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, Savior of the world, the divine in human form. They wrote that the official birth date of Caesar on September 23rd should be recognized by all people and mark the beginning of recorded history and time. So, here's my point. If we want to understand what Christianity is really about and why the birth stories were included in the form that we have them in Matthew and Luke, these kinds of historical details are important. Because from the outset, it's undeniably clear that the story of Jesus' birth was and is a challenge to the authority of empire and the powers of this world. It says that we who embrace Jesus as a manifestation of who God is, and the word epiphany means manifestation or appearing. We who embrace Jesus as a powerful, and I would say ultimate manifestation of what God's love looks like in human form, will make God our highest priority, not the nation state. No matter how much we may value and appreciate the nation, and there's nothing wrong with loving and deeply valuing our own country, but if and when there is tension between the love and justice and compassion at the heart of the teachings of Jesus and the actions and policies of any nation state or any political leader's administration, the scriptures say that followers of Jesus will side with the love and the truth of God first. So the Epiphany story shows us that Jesus, as the human embodiment of God's love, will always represent a potential threat to any king or any political ruler who demands absolute loyalty, and to any ruler like Herod who is insecure, vengeful, dishonest, violent, authoritarian, and who will do anything to get and keep power for himself. The Christmas and Epiphany stories were a direct, bold statement by the early church to the Roman Empire. They were saying without any ambiguity, we pledge our allegiance to God and to Christ as revealed, and to Christ as revealed in Jesus, and not to Caesar. Isn't it amazing how easy it is to be around Christianity in our culture, or what I often refer to as churchianity, your whole life, and never really hear this? And isn't it even more amazing that in light of this, something like so-called Christian nationalism, or worse, white Christian nationalism, even exists? How did we misunderstand or twist around the actual message of the Bible that completely? It's impressive. Now, next week, we'll look more at the fact that as a result of the events of Epiphany, Joseph and Mary and Jesus immediately became immigrants targeted by their government who had to flee for their lives to another country. We'll come back to that. But here's today's more specific Epiphany message. The story about the wise ones from the east coming to Jesus tells us that the light and the love at the center of the biblical story is for all nations and all peoples. This radically inclusive love is one of the primary messages Jesus came to proclaim and to correct among his own people, first and foremost. His own beloved Jewish people, and this is not an anti-Semitic statement. But his own people had mistakenly come to the conclusion that being blessed by God meant that God loved and valued them more than other people. Jesus had to challenge and correct this misguided Jewish exceptionalism. And it was one of the things that got him killed by both his own religious establishment and the Roman Empire, suggesting that God loved all people equally. Isn't it amazing what a recurring problem this is for just about any group of humans? To think that one group of people is somehow superior to or inferior to others. Or that one group of people is a threat to our well-being and must be expelled or eradicated. Or that we've got it right and others are wrong. We can be guilty of arrogance and pride on any side of any issue. The wise ones from the East, foreigners, came to honor the uniquely powerful presence of God in Jesus. But they did not come to be converted by him or to him. They didn't need to be converted. They were led by the light they already knew to bow. That word translated pay homage can mean to bow to reverently acknowledge, to bow to the presence and power of God in the Christ child. They were led by the spirituality of their own people and land and culture. They already knew how to see and follow divine messages in the stars. It was their own indigenous wisdom that led them to the light of Christ, which was of the same essence as the light they already knew. There was no attempt to convert the wise ones from the East to Judaism. And they left Bethlehem, Zoroastrians, or however they identified themselves, and they found their way there not by reading the Hebrew scriptures, but by looking at the sky, at creation, and interpreting the stars as they knew how to do according to their own culture and spirituality. So this is an affirmation both of the significance of the light coming to earth in Jesus, but also of the fact that the light comes to and for all people in ways that they can understand. And what this light is all about is bringing people together in mutual respect and honor so that gifts can be shared and the presence and intentions of God in the world can be magnified. Now that's about as far as we're going to go today. To be continued next week, but I want to end by making this a little bit more personal. I know that a number of people here practice yoga in one way or another. I do myself. I love it. I love the way it honors the mind, body, spirit, mystery, and I love the Hindu spirituality that gave birth to yoga. And at the end of just about every yoga class, the instructor and the students will bring their hands to a prayer posture and bow and say namaste, which means the God in me sees the God in you. And when I am in me and you are in you, we are one. To me, this is the spirit of the wise ones coming from the East at Epiphany. And this says something essential about our way in churches like this of being followers of Christ. If you come to this church and you're not sure what you believe, we're not going to try to convince you to believe in some specific doctrine about Jesus. And we're certainly not going to tell you you have to believe certain things in order to avoid being punished by an angry, judgmental God. We don't believe in a punishing God. We're not going to ever try to frighten someone into their next step spiritually. Instead, we're going to say, hey, what star, metaphorically speaking, led you here? And then beyond the metaphor, how can we help each other connect with and align with the God who has always been with us, trying to get through to us? The God who's already with you. Even if you feel lost, even if you're not sure what you believe, we're going to say, hey, God's already with you. God's always been with you. You just haven't recognized it yet. Let's help each other with that. And we'll tell you, we see God in you. And we bow to the presence of the Christ in you. And we see your gifts. And we welcome them. And we need them. So let's explore that and live out that presence together. To be continued next week.